I was 17 years old at the time, and I was a passenger in the car. My friend was driving. We were, young, younger than I am now, of course, 17 years old, no seat belts in the car at the time. And we were just two kids having fun. He had just gotten this car that day and probably didn't know how to handle it very well. And we were driving. We weren't drunk, but we were drinking and smoking marijuana, typical for that time period. And going out to a party. It was still early in the evening, and he lost control of the car while passing another car at high speed, and we spun off the road and hit a power post that was solid, didn't break in half of the car, hit the post at about 60 miles an hour. And I came flying off the seat. I can still remember that and hear the sound of the crash and into the windshield. I know now that I would have probably passed away at that point because we hit the impact window with a high force impact, but somehow I hit the rear view mirror, and knowing a little bit about physics and accidents, that slowed my speed down enough so that when I did hit the window full on, wasn't fatal. I fell back into my seat and knew I was hurt. I put my hand up to my head. You can't feel pain because the shock is too great then, but my head was split open. If I ever go bald, there'll be a big crack in there. And looked over at my friend, and he was crushed against the steering wheel and passed right out. So again, at that time, you think you're immortal and bulletproof when you're that young, and you don't realize the consequences. And I still remember I went into my seat there, and I thought, let's put this car in reverse and back out of this mess. But of course, that was impossible. This is when reality hits you straight in the face and you're faced with your mortality. And I was, and I remember getting out of the car and thinking maybe I'll just walk home. I was about 2 miles from my home, and I took a few steps on the side of the road and realized I was not going to make it home, and that this was serious, and started to sink in. So I remember sitting on the grass there by the side of the road and just thinking this may be it. I don't know, but luckily a passengers, or rather other cars, started stopping for the accident, and one of the ladies who got out of to help was a nurse. So she immediately applied pressure to my wound to subdue the bleeding. And I you know I think I passed out at that point, but came back right away and realized that this accident had happened. Went to the hospital, and at the hospital they treated me and my friend really poorly because I guess we were kind of stereotypical hippies at the time. This is 1970s, and the nurses were not sympathetic to our injuries at all. And I still remember that, and I had to call my parents. And after I'd been stitched up and my dad came to pick me up, they should have never let us, or me in particular, go uh, to home. I should have stayed in the hospital because my injuries were very severe. And looking back on it now, was like they were just negligent, I suppose you could say. Anyway, got home, and my mom was horrified, of course, and we did the worst thing possible when you have head trauma. Is I went to bed, and by this time my head was really starting to hurt, and the blood was starting to flow. There was pressure in there, because I had actually cracked my skull. They had not taken an X-ray, and I had massive internal bleeding. So that's a recipe for death. And I lay down in my bed, and I could hardly explain the pain that was going through my body at that my head, And my mother came to my bedside. I remember that, and by this time, I was no longer in my body. I was, I would say, 3, 4 feet above it, and I'm in this blue light, very comforting, very peaceful. and I felt myself being, pulled away, and I was totally accepting of whatever was coming my way in this gorgeous sort of bluish light. And looking down at my mother, who was applying what we know as holy water. My parents were raised. I was raised in a religious household, Catholic, Ukrainian Catholic actually, and they would regularly bless water and give it to the parishioners. My mother would always have a bottle of that around the house to bless the house or food. And so she was putting it on a rag and wiping my wound and my face with this holy water. And I remember us thinking, I don't know if I told my mom how much I appreciate her and love her at this point. And I remember going back into my bed. At least I remember myself talking to her and saying, Mom, thank you so much for all you've done. I love you. And at that point, I went. I was totally at peace with dying. I was thought this is would be it. I'll never wake up. I'm done. I'm off to the next world. I don't recall being scared. It was very welcoming and very, very comforting. But as I had come back into my body there, at least partially, and fell asleep, I don't remember anything after that. I don't remember whatever happened at that point. I remember waking up sometime in the early morning, probably 4 o'clock, with a more severe headache and getting out of bed and realizing, guess I didn't die. I guess I'm still here. And going to the bathroom and looking at my face, which, if you know something about those internal injuries, when the blood comes down and it's pouring into your tissues, it collects into your tissues around my eyes like this, and they were, one was completely shut, was swollen like a raccoon, and the other one was sort of open. I could see myself and look at, oh my God, am I ever hurt? Look like Frankenstein. But I was alive, and the next morning we went to the my mother took me to the hospital, and they did an assessment, and they said, I don't know how you're alive, kind of thing. You've got a cracked skull, you got massive internal bleeding, but it was already too late for them to do any procedures that would have eased I guess, the swelling or the bleeding inside. So they instructed me, just you're gonna have to recover on your own, and I did. Took pretty much 8 months, 9 months to a year for all that my tissues to return to a normal color. So that is my story, and you'll say um, it changed my life. Because number one, I realized that we are mortal. You're gonna die, and I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I was very comfortable. I thought, well, when I'm going to make the most of this life that I have, and when death comes knocking again, I'll be ready for it. And it changed a lot of things about my lifestyle that I had been doing. I was less risky, of course, and more in line with making a life for myself and not just partying and enjoying that type of life. Certainly never driving again in that condition, although I was just a passenger. I mean, I was guilty as anybody. So, carried on with my life, and it has made a lasting impact on me. I'll never forget that moment. Never.
I can imagine. I mean,
Mhm.
it's definitely not something that you would easily forget. Do you think,
No, no, especially that. Yeah. Go ahead.
because you mentioned the holy water in particular, do you think there's a difference when we use holy water?
Yes. Water is a keeper of vibrations, and I mean, all water is blessed, all life is blessed. But when our intentions go to it, I guess with the religious, it's what you believe too. But there is magic in the world, and there is magic in the sense that vibrational energy or metaphysical things are connected to physical things. And But I suppose, it's hard to say whether that, blessed water is what brought me back to life, or just that I had more to do here in the world. I wasn't ready to pass on to the other side.
Sure. I mean, I definitely don't think that it was the water, that provided that experience. I think that would
Yeah.
be quite intense. But you hear a lot of stories about, and we have that in my religion as well, that we tend to bless water and
Hmm.
to use it, and you do hear stories about things happening, and I do think it needs to be combined with having faith in it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But
Hmm.
it's also, the way you said it, I understand that intention is also very important. So, if I pour myself a glass of water and I'm being mindful of it, and I'm saying,
Mhm.
this is going to hydrate me and it's going to be good for my body, I'm thinking that's also going to help that water do a better job. Would you think
Absolutely.
so?
Oh, yeah, I think so too. Again, it's your intentions, like I say, everything that we do is purposeful. There's a meaning behind it. It's like, when we drop a pebble into a water, there's ripples that carry on forever, as far as we know. So the same goes for our lives. Like when we say to somebody, "Have a great day," it has an intention. It has a good vibration towards it, and the opposite is true too. When we flip somebody off the bird, and be angry at them, that also goes forward in the universe too. So we have to be mindful of all those things, and certainly living, like you say, with a sense of gratitude for the gift of water, for the gift of life, I think is a first step toward living in harmony with the vibrational energy of this plane that we're on, making it the best possible. We're. Mhm.
Absolutely. Now, I know that this out of life experience was not necessarily the only different experience that you've had, because I know that you also have psychic gifts. Has the
Yeah.
NDE sort of played into those becoming available to you? Or was this something that you've always noticed about yourself?
It's something that I've always noticed about myself, for sure. I've ever since I was a little boy, I knew I was somehow different. I thought everybody could astral travel, for example. I thought I used to, go away to other places as I was younger, and I thought people could do that, but not everybody is like that. And when I was about 6 or 7 years old, my Guido, which is grandfather in Ukrainian, he showed me how to find water with a willow stick. He was what's known as a water witch in the Ukrainian culture. He had other powers too, but he never made a big deal out of it. But he used to find all the water in the countryside. Well, speaking of water too, like how does that work? How do you hold a willow stick and feel the vibration of underground water? There's something magical about that we physically can't really explain, but quantum physics kind of does, because that theory of everything's in motion and vibration. And his way of explaining it too, so when he showed me how to do it, and I felt that stick just pull down, and it was magic. I thought, what is that, And he said, well, you've got he would say, you've got it. You feel the vibration, just let it go through you. And somehow you're connecting with the earth. You can feel that motion underneath you, right from your feet upwards towards your arm, to where that thing, the willow stick, pulls down. And it was magic then, and it's magic now to me too. The fact that that's the case, and now being a professional psychic with the tarot cards, I see it's very similar. Kind of the cards are like the willow stick. They're a tool that can connect with the vibrations of the people who are asking questions, and I'm e- entering them, much like that feeling, that same feeling that I felt when I first learned that I could find water, that had the whatever the makeup of my body or my mind was very sensitive to that. And I started developing that, even as a young a young person, and throughout my adult life, I discovered a lot of things about metaphysics, always researching it. And I used to read cards for friends and family at gatherings and birthday parties. They would just say, "Oh, Marv, you're the guy who reads the future, and you can tell the future." And so, anyway, even things like I could see things that happened, but like something that would happen in 3 or 4 days away or whatever. I would somehow see it before it happened. And so that people would come to me because I had that reputation, I guess. And 4 years ago during COVID, I'm also a musician, and musicians, I think, well, I know there's a lot of us who are also psychically gifted. We're all psychically gifted. We all have psychic ability, but it's like, I'd be the last person to say I'm not gifted musically. I have a gift, but gift is what you do with it. When you practice it more, you get better at it. And I guess over the years, I've gotten better at it. And since I've gone pro 4 years ago, I guess I know I'm a way better psychic today than I was when I started. And it's the same with music. You get better at it as you practice your craft, I suppose. But you're in tune with the vibrational energy. The best playing that I do, the best singing and the best guitar playing I do is when I'm a clear channel and I'm tying into a higher vibration of the universe. I'm just in motion with it. I'm also a songwriter. Like I say, the best songs are those ones that are out there and you just sort of tune into them with your antenna, I suppose. And your skills are important, but what's more important is the connection with the universe and drawing forth a thing of beauty that you're not really creating. It's not ego, I guess. That's what I'm getting at. The best readings that I do and the best playing that I do are all, they're they're like egoless. You don't it's not me doing it. It's I'm just channeling it. And I think a lot of psychics, let's say, or people who are, I know nowadays there's a lot of people discovering, say, the Wicca religion and other powerful religions. Well, they're all the same. I mean, even the priests with their service, like they shouldn't feel ego. They should feel humble, I guess, with the connection to the divine. And you know what I'm saying? Like, am I getting off topic here? But
No,
it's
absolutely.
if you I read tons of books about magic, and casting spells and all this kind of stuff, and a lot of them miss that. They seem to think, and the listeners out there, again, if you could chant, you could pray, you could spin around with wands, magic wands. They have power, but the power only comes from the other side. It's not you. It's not you as Harry Potter making the magic. Um, it's it's a bigger force that you're just part of. Like I come back to my grandfather, my Guido. He didn't see it as ego. He would just like tell things like as they are, and it was no big deal. I said, "Oh, there's water down there, 50 feet, good water. I'm telling you, just drill. That's all." And no fanfare,
Do you
and I
think?
just try to be that way.
Yeah, and I think that's so interesting because very often I think we tie everything that we do to us, right?
Yeah, we do. We
And
think
it's
it's us doing it.
yeah, and it's a status thing. But the what you just said, of whether we do spells or we summon something, or it's actually
Mhm,
not us doing that work, and it's not necessarily our capabilities. Like, is it?
mhm,
I'm imagining there's probably a lot of people. What I keep hearing is that a lot of people are discovering their powers, or the fact that we're all psychic more nowadays than
mm,
before.
I
Do you
agree.
think there's a risk in people that are maybe not properly trained or don't have the right support system in uncovering powers? And do you think wrong things or unhelpful things can happen when we build this status of like, I've done this, I'm super powerful, I'm amazing.
That's bullseye. That's why it is very dangerous, that slippery slope to ego, when you think you're the one doing it. You think that you're casting the spell, that you are somehow everyone's magic, but if you lose that connection with the universe, the ultimate power of love, and you slip into, it's a very slippery slope, I think. And I can speak personally about that a little bit, but I think in general it's more widespread than we know. There, the other side is not filled with all, angels and teddy bears and unicorns. It's as humans, we're right in between, and there's a lot of very scary and destructive things on the other side. And there's a reason why, of course, the Lord's Prayer says, "Lead us not into temptation, deliver us from evil." Those words are really powerful. And I think all people who involve themselves in magic have to think about that very clearly, because there's spirits that aren't helpful, that are destructive. I don't know if you've read the play Macbeth by William Shakespeare, but that has been played out many, many times in life. It's the witches, and it's not, the other side cannot hurt us, but they can make us hurt ourselves. And the first way we hurt ourselves is by being egotistical. And like, say, why doesn't the evil just take over? They can't, because we're of God, but they can take over us, and they can make deals with people. They enter their spirit, and and people who are in positions of power are more susceptible to that than people who aren't, because the evil wants to spread the evil all among humanity. And if you're in power, like either president of the United States or the president of Russia, let's say, they go after you. They do, and they often win. And they because they can do massive damage with those kind of people, because those people spread hate and spread destruction. And the evil forces, the decreative forces or destructive forces of the universe uh, are dancing when this happens, when civilizations go down that path with their leaders doing that, and they get them under their control. If you remember the whole Shakespeare play, those forces they work slowly on Macbeth, and then until they get him completely under his control, and he's given up his free will to their will. And that's I strongly believe that's what's happening in the world today. And especially it's coming to a head because we're coming to the end of an age here, where a new age is upon us. We live in the end of times, the end of the old time, and we're entering a new age. And that's when the forces that have been controlling the world get really crazy, and they start doing more and more evil. And if you look at the history of our last century, it's the most blood-soaked maybe in our whole humanity. And what is driving that? If you look at it, what we've seen is ego dictators, power, people who think they have the power to do that, and they think they're doing it through themselves, but it's not. They're choosing evil, and they're choosing to hurt themselves. And it's mainly fear that it's fear, what the other side uses to control you. When you lose that fear of death, when you lose that fear of them, because they can't hurt you, then they have no power over you.
Is it maybe also like, when I tend to think of those men that are in key positions and they choose to do certain things, I tend to think it's maybe also a fear of being irrelevant or forgotten, because they all seem to want to do something grand, so that, you know, it's not important to do something good or to do something that's beneficial or helpful, but it's something big, like something that will get people to remember you.
I agree that that's certainly part of it too. And they're driven also by fear of their their fear of being alone and no connection. Uh, I think they're highly fearful of you're maybe right. Like I'd say they're afraid of irrelevance. They're afraid of losing their power. They again they get driven into that void, or that horrible disconnection with the universe that they are in, and they lose their ability to love, to feel. Anyway, I
Exactly the question that I've been asking myself, like how do you exactly, like for 2 years I've had that question of literally like, how can you sleep at night? Like, how could it possibly be peaceful? Because I could not imagine being in such a situation and not
usually
worrying
they
about it.
don't sleep. They lose that
Yeah.
sleep. But like again, if we go back to Shakespeare again, Macbeth, after he kills Duncan, he goes, "I've Macbeth has ruined sleep. Macbeth will never sleep no more. Never have that clear conscience." For whatever reason, we have a conscience. Well, not for every. I mean, it's very important, that sense of right and wrong that we as humans have. But we can be tricked into believing that it, it's something that we can sacrifice for our own benefit,
Yeah.
for the power. I guess, like, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world
Mm-hmm.
will know peace.
Yeah.
And I think
And
we're entering, myself, as I believe we're entering a new age of our humanity, where there will no longer be, and even in the family, the ruling father, the fear, and also our nature of what we consider God is changing too. So the fearful God is becoming more the loving God, which started, of course, like 2,000 years ago. But it takes us a long time to get to know these things. But there'll be a new age coming to us. Perhaps our children's children's will not have these kind of fearful leaders in their family, in their churches, in the world, in their leader of their politics. It'll become more of a personal relationship with the universe, and personal responsibility for your own happiness and for your own doing good. And you won't be driven by fear. You'll be driven by love. And when that happens, those fearful leaders, they'll disappear. They won't be around. At
that's
the end, I can do another analogy for, like, I've been a teacher for
yeah.
40 years, a student-centered teacher, and I know a lot of teachers out there, even as I talk right now, that they deal with their approach to teaching kids is to make them scared of them, fear, as opposed to make them feel that they're valued and they're loved. And I
Oh
know for
goodness, I could
myself.
tell you so many stories from my own experience.
Yeah. Oh, I bet you can. Most people can. I mean, I still remember starting grade one, and the principal came. He didn't say, "Welcome to school, and you're going to learn so much, and I welcome, we love you." He showed us his straps. He said, "This one's for that, and this one's for this, and this. You better behave." And I you know I know, as you'll do far more learning when you're in an environment where you feel accepted, safe, and loved, than when you feel fearful. Fear works. There's no doubt it works, but it's not as powerful as love. And an army driven by love is always more powerful than an army driven by fear. That's time and time. It's been proven through history. And if you're just attacking the enemy because you're scared of the repercussions of your dictatorial leader, versus a side that's fighting for their families and for their land, they'll always be more powerful in the long run. And I think we're going to learn this lesson slowly but surely it's becoming more and more apparent to us that that's the way it is, that it's the power of love over the love of power.
That's really important. And I think it takes a minute to let that sink in, but I think it's so good for all of us to reflect on it, because I think every time, and I say this to myself as well, every time I get caught up in wanting a certain outcome or needing to be in control of something, and I do have control freak tendencies, but I always try to think of like, hey, is this really about me? Like, is this really the way it needs to
Mhm.
be? Like, let me just second guess myself here, because it just feels like I'm about to chase this, well thing, and
Mhm.
just want to make sure that that's really what I should be going after.
Yes. Good advice for all of us, what you just said there for sure. It's just stop, breathe, um, lose I think I forget who said it, but fear is just anger turned upside down kind of thing. Um, and it's all bad. It doesn't lead to anything good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because we were talking about these dark forces, and the fact that it almost sounds like they can lead us into temptation, right? Like they can't
Yes.
do harm, but they could tempt us in a way that would result in us harming ourselves, harming the
That's
people around us.
mhm.
Now, do you have any advice on, how could we possibly tell if we're being used or if we're being influenced or suggested? And is there any way that we can break free if we fear that we or somebody we love is in a similar situation? Is there any way that we can break free or help that?
Excellent question, Sabrina. That is yeah. So I would say again, trust your intuition and trust your feelings, because I think the universe does speak to all of us individually with loving kindness and words that. And if you feel that you're being drawn away down a path of hatred and fear, you know that you're not in touch with good spirits. There are spirits that are out there to get you and draw you into temptation, and you're not going to be delivered from evil. You'll in fact be acting for evil. So the only guide truly is your conscience. You could also approach a psychic who's clearly on the side of the good light, who could also give you some guidance that way, what you should be doing in your life. So but again, you have to be sure that it's somebody who's on the right path. Uh, you know, all of us who do spiritual work, whether you're a priest or whether you're a psychic, it's a very temptatious road to travel on. And again, you look what's happened with the Catholic Church, the way they have abused their power with, there's too many cases to even mention where they've gone wrong and they've hurt people. And that's sad. It's just really bad. um, and so you got to be careful as you travel, as you journey forward, and make sure that you listen to the voice within your head, and make a good bond with the universe or God. It's God is not there. The universe is not there to hurt you. It's there to help you. And you got to be careful that you don't let bad things into your realm. Um, I wish there was a easier answer to that, but I mean, like, there really isn't. There's people like all those, let's say, people during World War II, that collaborated with the Nazis. You're just a prison guard, or you don't, it's wrong, but you're driven by fear to act that way. And I think looking at what just happened with us with COVID not that long ago, it seems to me I can understand why educated, beautiful society like the German society fell under the mass psychosis of this murder cult. And we see it in Muslim countries today. There's and Christian countries today that are falling further and further into this hurtful world of self-destruction and self and grind and thinking that they can get this done for themselves. And a lot of I sensed it during uh, the movement towards censorship, not no freedom of speech. You've got to follow the rules, follow lockstep, march with the crowd. Um, those are the early signs of being very manipulated through fear. And I think you can forget that you are in charge of the truth. You have a responsibility to that. Um, I wish I could say a little bit more clearly. Maybe somewhere down the road, the answers will be given to me. If that's your beautiful question, how do you let people know that they're going down a bad path? Because the sooner they know it and the sooner they can correct it, the better it is for all of us. Yeah.
Exactly. And one thing that I've heard, I think it was last week, and maybe you'll agree with it, it was that usually the good guides or the good spirits, they tend to offer suggestions, they tend to offer questions, whereas the negative forces tend to be a bit more, how should I call it, direct, or sort of pushing you towards doing something. Is that how you experience it as well?
Yes, for sure. And they'll use fear. The good forces are not to be feared at all. You know it. My NDE was very clear about that. Again, when you're moving toward good feelings, it's good. And you feel it with people, like even here through this internet, I can sense you're not doing this for aggrandizement. You're not trying to lead anybody down a bad path. So you're really good. I can sense that. Um, Another thing that I've done in my life, for whatever reason, I'd go into the Canadian wilderness by myself and spend 2 or 3 days in the woods and the mountains, without any contact. And there is a time, and your mind will play games with it. And people who get lost in the woods, they don't die of exposure typically, they or hunger. They die of panic. And so that if you can control that panic and you control that fear, then I think you've got the strength to engage in like what you're
Mm.
doing, because you've got the strength to stand up to fear and temptation, and certainly having an NDE is, I think a lot of us who've had that, we get that too. We really get that strength because we know we're not afraid of dying, and we know that it's the evil forces that are just trying to lead us into doing things we don't want to do, and we know that are wrong, but the fear drives us. And it comes from up, it comes from the top, usually, especially in this last age that we've been living in. But when that changes, and I think it's changing as we speak, it'll become easier for people to live authentic lives and have an authentic relationship with the truth.
Well, that's definitely something to look forward to. And
Yes. So don't lose, all of those people listening out there. Do not lose faith. Your faith is a great gift. You got to keep believing in the good forces winning. If you give up, it's the wrong thing to do. It's certainly. I know there's so many people who have, and the suicide rates are so sky high. And it's their you're don't hurt yourself. It's just don't love yourself, love the universe, realize that we're all connected. Be kind. The word, in fact, the English word kindness means we're of the same kind. We have that connection to each other. And you have to always feel that empathy and sympathy that we have as human beings. When that goes away, that's really damaging, and it's leading us away from our true selves and our true purpose in life.
That's very true. And I think it ties in with this Chinese proverb, apparently, that I've seen today on Instagram.
Oh,
And I think it just exemplifies very beautifully what we've been talking about. It says, the man that blames others still has a long way to go. The man that blames himself is halfway there. And the man who blames no one has arrived. And I think it speaks to the importance of giving grace and kindness to others, but
mhm,
also extending that to yourself, right? Because sometimes
right.
we can be so harsh on ourselves, and
Oh yeah,
we can judge ourselves so much worse than the others would.
yes, yeah, that's true. That's very wise. Whoever said that. And uh, like I say, the present is a present. We we should make the most of each moment because we are mortal. We are going to die sometime, and that's the lesson. I think it would be great for all of us to just stop and realize that, and then reassess where we are in our lives, knowing that, and stop the race, stop the madness, stop the fear, and live an authentic life in harmony, listening to the voice, listening, making sure that we're not meant to be alone. When we feel alone, that's hell. That, when a separation from the universe or God or the Great Spirit, separation from nature, we that is, what do you live for? Like, that's, I think that's what leads to so much self destruction.
That's
Um,
very true.
and try, out there too, like, life is not easy. It's not supposed to be. We wouldn't want to have all of our perfect existence, like living a life like, all of our needs taken care of. It's only through struggle that we develop ourselves, through our strength. We're we're not in a situation where we're finding ourselves. We're in a life where we're supposed to create ourselves. We're born, as my Guido used to say, we're born naked and we die naked. It's this, we put it on here in this life to for a purpose, to do something, some kind of influence that's good, not destructive, to build something new, to, again, even just the simple thing of a smile to make somebody's day. You're making the universe a better place in that regard. When you ruin somebody's day, you're doing the opposite.